Welcome back, everybody. We're in the team room once again. It's me, Aaron, your least favorite PJ personality on the podcast. I want to say a huge welcome to everybody that's just joining us here today, finding us on the YouTube and on the Instagram. What's up? For everybody that's been there since the day ones, as the kids would call them. What's up? Welcome back. We've got Nikki Selby on with us again. You may know her as Fly Girl RN. She's already been on the program once before, but most importantly, this week, we're bringing on the mastermind. Some would say the puppeteer of March Mill Me Madness, the woman behind the curtain, behind the wizard, behind the wall that makes it all happen. Chelsey from HunterSeven Foundation. Welcome to the team room. How are you?
I am living the dream. How are you?
Anytime, I love the meme that says, anytime you ask somebody how they're doing, they say living the dream, ask if they're okay. Like, are you okay? Are you seriously okay right now?
I am not. I am in California, and I didn't think a place worse than Massachusetts existed. Here we are. And
first of all, how dare you? The home of Tom Brady. How dare you?
I am a Jimmy Garoppolo fan, so
there you go. GBG.
I thought
so
Nikki told me
Cali living that.
She said it's her favorite.
You're having a really terrible time. I think gas is like 610 is what it was this morning when I filled it.
My favorite meme that's come out is that gas is actually higher now in the actual state of California than what they envisioned in the movie I Am Legend, which was post-apocalyptic. So they couldn't even imagine in the movies that gas would actually get this high.
Yeah.
I think
fantastic.
And I don't know if you guys have this answer, but people were telling me that prices were going to double by the summer before Ukraine and Russia kicked off. And I'm kind of like, how did people know this stuff?
How did you know that? How could you even make that happen? I'm going to go on another podcast. It's going to be straight conspiracy theories. Nikki, you're my first guest. You're already in.
It's funny
all
that
of those conspiracy theories turned out to be true. So
I know.
I will tell you right now, I graduated with double honors with my undergrad, my master's, too easy, published internationally. There's not many people I respect in the nursing field more than Nikki. And it's funny because like a lot of nurses, they're like compassionate. They're like compassionate. They're like empathetic. And Nikki's like, listen, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to let you in on a secret. That's bullshit. Like I said to her yesterday, I was on the plane and I was like, hey, we should try to go do something good and help out humanitarian work in the Ukraine. And I got a paragraph of like reasons why I should not. And I was like, I trust you. A little scared.
Knowing Nikki, it was an itemized list. There were superscripts, like it had references at the bottom. It had footnotes on it. I guarantee I know what that text looks like, girl. Like you opened yourself up for that.
I did. And then she was like, who the fuck's going to take care of you when you're dead and bleeding? And I was like, oh my God.
So, bleeding out on the streets of freaking Ukraine. And yeah.
So needless to say, up here.
The guys leave me alone for one afternoon. They're like, Aaron, I'm sure you can handle this podcast on your own. And so far, I think we're demonetized. And I think we just got our first strike on YouTube. We haven't even published it yet, but that's how machine learning works. So there it is. Chelsey, no, not because you swore. I'm kidding. I was more talking about like exposing the truth about the Russia-Ukraine conflict and Nikki starting to, here's 75 bad things. Chelsey, I want you to talk about HunterSeven Foundation and how you found your way there. So for everybody that doesn't know you or that doesn't know HunterSeven, start off with kind of your history and then tell us where HunterSeven came from.
Yeah, so I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional family, first and foremost. And I was like, well, I guess my only option, since I am good at nothing except sports, is to join the military. So out of high school, I joined the military. I enlisted as an E1. I cried my first 2 weeks of basic training because I thought I was tougher than I actually was. And it was a very interesting time for me. But it was something that I really enjoyed. So after 10 years of being in aviation for the most part, I ended up being promoted to E5 and then ended up being placed in a platoon leader spot, which at the time I was like, this is great. More stuff to do. And then everybody's like, you're an idiot. And so, sure as shit, I was an idiot because I was not an officer and I was doing officer work. Typical officers, they always find their ways to screw up the enlisted. So I think you went mute again.
Oh, he did get you're mute.
Did I go mute?
There you are. Yeah. No.
Nikki, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can't hear Aaron.
It's on purpose.
Oh. Okay. Yeah. So regardless, so yeah, I went into the. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
No, I was telling you to go because sometimes when I hit mute on this silly microphone, it kicks me off and I have to hit this like sequence of buttons on my computer to get the microphone to interface correctly. So I was just telling you, just go for it. Like continue your story.
That's the most Air Force thing I've ever heard.
Listen,
like
no one hates me on this podcast more than me. And it's not even like good Air Force. Like this isn't even my primary duty. This is something I've had to teach myself how to do. So it's not even like the top standard of good Air Force stuff. It's like dollar store Air Force product, which makes me even more upset.
Like the Air National Guard.
Like, oh, wow. We brought that. Okay. Not really that cool. Anyway, Chelsey, I guess continue with your story about how cool you are.
I come from an Air Force family, and I was the only one dumb enough to serve in the Army. So let's start there.
Nice. It's funny. I'm the oldest of 4 boys. I have 3 little brothers that are in the Air Force, or in the Army. So I was the only one that went Air Force. So that's a good one.
Smart decision. I mean,
sure.
Yeah. So, me being me, I was like, fuck that, I'm joining the Army. So I joined the Army. I ended up having a spine injury. I needed a surgery, and they were like, your career's over. We don't care if you're going to be a nurse. You can't commission. You're broken. See you later. Sayonara. And I was like, well, shit, what am I going to do now? So after 10 years, I ended up I was actually placed in the reserves for like my last 2 years, and I had to find something to do. So I was like, I guess I'll go to nursing school. And so I went to nursing school, and I was like, this sucks. All these people, like, it was so frustrating to me that everybody was just like the lateness, the wearing pajamas to class, eating snacks. Like, I was just like, this is very irritating for me. And so I was always on edge, and I was like, this sucks. I can't handle this. So eventually I just dealt with it, went to nursing school, and I met my husband, my now husband. And this was like 7-8 years ago. And he said to me, we met at a Dunkin' Donuts, and I made fun of his coffee because he got an extra with the sugar melted. And I was like, who the fuck, like, who's this for? And it was a pumpkin spice. I was like, that's disgusting.
Who's this for? You met your husband at Dunkin'. This is the most Boston story. This is like Massachusetts through and through.
It is.
The Dropkick Murphys is like, do you have I'm shipping up to Boston playing behind you just 24/7?
We are huge Ken Casey fans. Yeah, this is, and I mean, like, no shit. So we're sitting there, and I was like, meanwhile, I'm drinking this black hot coffee, and this guy's getting this large ice, extra pumpkin spice with the sugar melted. And I'm like, oh, like, your girlfriend must be terrible. And he's like, it's for me. And then he gets into his big old Dodge Ram pickup truck with the veteran plates. And I was like, time out, dude. And me being just a ball buster, I was like, I had to move we have these massive potholes in Massachusetts. I had to kind of like bypass the big orange barrel. And I was like, whoa, dude, this is your truck and that's really your coffee. And I just made fun of him. And then we just kind of hit it off. And, he's my best friend. I love him to death. And he does the same thing to me. I have a story for you guys afterwards. But when I met him, he said, I served in Iraq in the Army. And he was stationed in Germany for most of his career. Prior to, he was at Fort Lewis when it was still Fort Lewis. And so he deployed to Iraq 07-08, and he was stop loss. So he spent 16 months there, and he was attached to a 3-2, a Cav regiment, recon, and then he was reassigned to 1st Special Forces Group as one of their TOs. And so he said to me, a lot of my friends died because of Iraq. And I said, well, that's kind of, it makes sense. It's war. And he said, no, they died when they got home. And so he mentioned his best friend, who was 24, died the day they came back from Iraq from acute respiratory failure. One of his E6s died from acute myelogenous leukemia, which is a blood cancer. And then, just time after time, all of these people are dying off. And so, with the striker regiments, their recon platoons are only like 19 people deep. And so when a third of them passed away, it was kind of like, wow, what's the big deal here? And so What really got me is he said to me, my sergeant major, who was 44 years old, a big Irish guy, died from cholangiocarcinoma, which is a rare form of bile duct cancer. And it's only seen in like Asian males over the age of 80. So this 44-year-old Irish man should not have had that cancer. And they correlated it at MD Anderson with depleted uranium exposure from the strikers. And so he ended up passing away in January 2013. And his call sign as an E7 was HunterSeven. And so that's where the name came from, is my husband's, former sergeant major. So I started doing research in my undergrad, which published internationally with Nikki. Shout out to Nikki.
Is that where I wanted to ask this too? Is that where you met Nikki when you were working on the that project, or was it before that?
I don't remember. Nikki's always been a huge help since day one.
She's always around.
Well, I mean, if you were in the military medical community, Lieutenant Commander Nikki Selby, she'll downplay, but her reputation in the community, and I've spoken with her on different occasions. I remember one time we were up in the mountains in Utah, and she was telling me about transportation and me. I'm 31 years old, and I've seen a lot of crazy shit. I've been an ER nurse. I have my master's degree, but she offers a different perspective that not a lot of people can offer, with an educational, evidence-based, actual practice, hands-on outlook. And so when you hear her story, I mean, from a female perspective, holy shit, you kind of paved the way for search and rescue. And then for, just doing what you had to do in Afghanistan. Her story is funny as hell because it's so military-ish. Yeah, of course they left you on a fucking base. Of course the chalk took off without you. That's the military. Yeah. And so, I mean, I always, the other night, I had a guy who reached out who has 35 years old. He has acute renal disease, and he's only 35, and he served in the Marine Corps for the past 17 years. So I reached out to Nikki, and I was like, look at these labs, look at this medication list, help me figure this out. So she's kind of the subject matter expert on making sense of things that I can't make sense of, which is very rare because I can make sense of almost anything. So I don't know.
No, she's the smart one. I give that blunt perspective of, no, this is stupid. Right. And she makes it sound smart. So yeah,
is that when you started to kind of formalize your relationship with HunterSeven, Nikki? Is kind of, when you and Chelsey started meeting up? Because I really want to get into when this became the force of nature really that it is. If you're looking for somebody that wants to talk about, or really the gold standard for, hey, these problems, specifically unexplained cancers to service members at a rate much higher than their normal peers and their cohort and their population, HunterSeven is that name. And the fact that, Nikki, you've been involved with them for so long, it sounds like that's really interesting. So when did you really start diving deep into, what HunterSeven is doing?
Well, I mean, it started is the end of 2018, I think. And you guys were just starting. Mm-hmm. And they had reached out and said, hey, this is what we're about, and take a look at our mission. If you like it, if you could maybe help support it, and I started reading about it, and it was just wow, burn pit. It's stuff that we don't think about, right? We're all sitting there and we think about it when we're overseas and we're sleeping next to it and breathing it all in. But you don't, you leave that area and then you stop thinking about it, and you really don't correlate some of these cancers and whatever else with that, right? We leave it, forget about it. Oh, wow, that sucks. All these people are getting cancer. you don't think oh, maybe there's an actual environmental issue with that. So they reached out and I started reading about it, and I'm like, wow. And I started out on the cancer floor when I was a nurse. So got commissioned as a nurse after I did search and rescue, and they threw me on the cancer floor, which, it's like the military, wherever they need you. And it wasn't, I wanted to go to the ER, but it was no, you have to go on one of the wards. So went to the cancer floor expecting it to be older people, retirees and whatever else that are at the end of their life. And it turned out to be a lot more younger people with all these crazy, weird cancers. And so when they reached out to me, it kind of brought me back to those days. And I'm like, wow, I wonder if there's something, because I do remember thinking that when I was on the cancer floor, this is really weird that we have all these 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds with all these weird different cancers, and, brain cancer, lots of brain cancers, skin cancers, osteosarcomas, having to cut off their limbs because of the cancer, and just a whole variety of stuff. And it ranged from 19 years old to, well into, like their 60s, 70s or whatever, but a lot of like 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds. So I remember thinking about it then. So then flash forward to them reaching out, and I was like, wow, I wonder if there is a correlation with our environmental factors, with all these people suddenly getting cancers. And yeah, so when I read it, I was like, yeah, I'm totally down, and whatever I can do to help you. She talk about downplaying. She downplays herself. She's the brain of the whole thing. And she, for a long time, stood behind the camera while I was kind of like, oh, you can do this podcast. We got to but I don't know half of this, because the research thing is really not my forte at all. I love the information. I just don't like turning it into, where it sounds smart like she does. So
sure. Yeah.
So I'm doing these podcasts and I'm just like statistics and all this stuff. And I'm like trying to think about and trying to sound smart, but no, she's the brain behind it. I've just been here for support and offering, any assistance that I can, talking about my experiences with cancer and being overseas and whatever else that they need from me. So, and we just, she's awesome. So, when you meet her, you build a rapport, and
we just make fun of each other.
Yeah, we're very like-minded. So.
Oh, that's the best and the worst. So I always say that, on this axis is time, and on this axis is like how much you hate me. And the shorter that like x-axis is for me, the hate me is way up top. Like people actually like that know me for a long time are like, Aaron's not such a bad dude. He does mean well. He just kind of comes across bad. It's that those people that you meet right away that they're too much like you, and then you guys share a lot of the same, a lot of the same feelings. It's like you're in violent agreement with everything, and you're like, wait, this person and I, we're going to be friends.
There's very few nurses that think along the lines, and I won't say it publicly, but there's a lot of nurses that share the same views with. Yeah. So she doesn't know what a class 6 is.
Hey,
that's still.
That's just her having an enlisted, but that's just her having an enlisted staff. She doesn't have to worry about she didn't have to worry about the N6. Her NCOs took care of the classes 1 through 9. So it's all good. She knew what class 8 was. So she was all over that, because that's your medical class.
So I think Nikki spent, how many years were you enlisted for?
10 and a half years.
10 and a half years, and you don't know what a class 6 was? Come on.
No, and she was saying I have to go to the class 6. I'm like, what do you mean you have to go to the class 6?
On post, I said I had to go to North Island to go to class 6.
Yeah, and I was like, what do you mean you're going to the class 6? And she's like, the packy. And I'm like, what the fuck is the what are you talking about right now?
It's the shopette. Like, it's the shopette, ma'am. Like, the package store. I love it.
But like in Nikki's defense, I've drank with her in the past, and it's one drink and done. She turns bright red and like takes a nap. Yeah. So I would give her a pass for not knowing class 6.
Yeah. And Chelsey's on the other spectrum. Do not ever challenge her to a drinking challenge ever. You will lose.
I am Irish and I am from Boston.
Yeah.
I challenge you.
I'm good with it. Even coming from the cold tundra of Northeast Ohio, I would take that with a measured approach, I would say. So I kind of like, the movie, and Nikki hearing, you talk about it and realizing truths that you had already learned. You just didn't put them together. You didn't connect those dots. I've done it before too. Like, it's like the scene in every good crime movie where the detective has a flash of everything he's already seen, these snapshots of time that lead up to this final conclusion. And I had my own kind of, when I was doing some research about HunterSeven and in our chats to talk, I look back to a lifetime now of me sitting, breathing in jet fuel and, having some weird grease from the aircraft on my hand and on my clothes, or being exposed to stuff, and, hearing more and more of, my peer group with these things that should never have happened. Like, I have, cancer has touched my life in a personal way as well, to where, I have close personal friends, or maybe one removed, of, this type of cancer is seen 1 in literally 1 million people, and 2 of my friends have gotten it. You know what I mean? Like, those things that's a weird thing. And it's even weirder to come to those conclusions and decide, hey, I need to do something about this. I need to positively affect this. So for you, did you have that crystallizing moment when you decided to turn HunterSeven Foundation into the charitable organization that it is, or Or was it something that was just like so in your face, it was just apparent, you're like, okay, we got to do this?
So at first I thought it was just burn pits. I was like, well, burning trash in a huge pit is probably not the best idea. But the more we kind of researched into it, we decided that we wanted to be a research and educational based nonprofit organization. And so what turned into a focus on research education, all of a sudden our immediate needs started blowing up. And, during COVID, I was obviously, as an ER nurse, I was straight in the ER for 60, 70 hours a week, sleeping there, showering. It was terrible. So it wasn't until after that I could really like get back in and, through some changes within the organizational structure. I mean, like, I can't even speak for myself. I have, Jack, we have a nurse practitioner who was Army intelligence, and, he's amazing. We have Keith from actually Dead Reckoning Collective. He does our immediate needs and case management. Yeah. So we have actually a pretty in-depth team. More people than I think people realize. And so, just looking at the stories, looking at the cases, I mean, like I said, I spent my time in aviation, Nikki, yourself. And I mean, we don't think about it like this, but JP8 is probably one of the most toxic things you can be exposed to. And so there was one incident where I remember the general, a 2-star general, put me in charge as an E5 with this demolition blast that was supposed to be set off for a demo. I don't even know. But I was like, fuck yeah, I want to blow shit up. Like, that sounds gnarly. So,
this is the best additional duty ever. I get to light stuff on fire for the general. No, this is great.
So
usually the general's involved, but it's in my counseling afterwards.
Usually I'm getting yelled at. And so he said, he's like, you're the smartest one here. So we're going to I was like, oh God. And so we took bags of JP8. The Air Force was with us because we were on a flight line. We took bags of JP8, 2-gallon bags and plastic bags. We put them in cardboard boxes, and we probably made a football field wide, and we attached det cord. And so me being me, I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm going to det cord this all, I'm all excited, and I'm putting dynamite in places it shouldn't be. And, they're like, here's a ton of stuff, just have at it. And so they're like, Chelsey, you did all this, so you get to blow it up with a 9-volt. And I was like, oh my God, I was so excited. And so all of a sudden I see the Air Force people move way to the other side of the airfield. And I'm like, where are they going? me being me, like, where are they going? And so I was with one other, he was the E4 at the time. Now I think he's the E6. And so we had this F-18 go shooting by. And so I was meant to, to kind of display like what it would look like for a blast. And so as soon as it did that, I stripped the wire and tapped this 9-volt, and all of a sudden it blew up. And we didn't think about it, but we were downwind. And so everything caught on fire. My boots were on fire. It was like one of those quick flash bursts, and then just black smoke covered everywhere. And so when I tell people, it's like, it didn't hurt, but like when you have the oxygen removed from your lungs, it is the most insane feeling ever. And so like, I still have pictures of it. And I was like, wow, that was such a great time, but such a bad thing to do. And so, a few years later, I ended up at Mass General, and they thought I was having an abdominal aortic aneurysm. And I was like, I'm not that unhealthy, And so come to find out, I had these nodules on my lungs. And they're like, listen, lady, you need to stop smoking. You got the lungs of like a 60-year-old. And I was like, smoking what? Because I haven't smoked a cigarette in my life. And they're like, oh, wow. Weird. Okay. And they're like, so don't worry about it. And I was like, I'm going to worry about it. Like, I was 27, and, and so like all these different things. And so, aviation is one of the most toxic environments you can be in. And I mean, that's statistically proven. And I know we chatted briefly about it, but the rate of cancer in the United States Air Force far surpasses any other branch in the military. And so in theory, when you say burn pits are bad, of course they're bad. You shouldn't burn shit. It's just not good.
Right.
But it's only one source of the problem. It's not the source of the problem, right? Because if it was the source of the problem, we wouldn't have so many aviators with cancer. We wouldn't have so many service members from the Air Force with cancer. We wouldn't have so many special operators with cancer, because special operators aren't sitting around on a fucking base throwing shit in a burn pit. They're kicking indoors, they're throwing grenades in buildings and blowing stuff up, so a lot of the news right now covers burn pits, which is such a pain in the ass because it's not even close to being the biggest problem, right? But it's like that fight or flight. It's like when you're driving and you see a car accident and you're like, you can't look away because you're like, your amygdala gets all excited and you start tweaking. It's like that.
Sure.
Like burn pits give you that quick flash of excitement, and so you can't look away. So it's stimulating, but it's not the biggest problem, right? And so that's kind of where we fell in. And I mean, we put out a thing on Memorial Day last year, and we said, if you know anybody who's died from cancer, share their story. And so we were bombarded with stories, like 500 within the first 2 weeks of people who have died. Oh, wow. And I mean, some of these people, what was more scary was, one of the names submitted was actually my training officer, my CW4. And he died from pancreatic cancer. And I had no idea it didn't, And so when you see stuff like that, and then I remember seeing a name of a doctor from Balboa Medical Center. And I sent Nikki a text and I said, hey, do you know this guy? And she's like, yeah, died from colon cancer. And I mean, like, it's even scarier when it's so close to home, people that you knew and people that you served with. And you're like, oh shit, And so like when I keep seeing my pilots come up and died from this cancer. And I'm like, oh shit, Right. So not only is it something that I advocate for to get checked out on a secondary preventative level, but like, hey, understand your exposures because like literally, like it could kill you.
Yeah. And Nikki, I wanted to ask you specifically, like, you are, whether you like to wear that hat or not, like you are the subject matter expert. So for my type, and I was shocked, Chelsey mentioned that talk, like for Air Force Special Operations and pilots, people working around the flight line, maintainers, I was shocked to learn that we were far and above. And I did my own independent due diligence, and we are far and away by a factor of 2 or sometimes 3 for our service components for how much cancer that is prevalent among young service members. So what are some of those things, if you could lay out, hey, if you work with fuels, if you do this job, like what are those career fields that should be like, hey, I should be more aggressive in my recognition of something wacky going on?
I mean, I think it's, the Air Force thing, that was a shocker to me too. I didn't know that until Chelsey had mentioned that. But like she says, it's got to be, something to do with, whether it's the JP8, the fuel that we're around, or the exhaust, whatever it is, it's causing all this stuff. I don't think it is only, just that though. It's so many things. And Chelsey has brought up, the shooters, people who are constantly shooting all the time, and you're getting, you did a whole post on that, and the blowback you're getting from, shooting all day long, which would explain a lot with the special operations crew. I don't really think, if you're in a certain job or field that you should be more aware. I just think if you're in the military and you've been exposed to all this stuff at some point and you're having some weird symptoms, then you need it. And our biggest thing, and my biggest thing when Chelsey and I have talked, is you have to advocate for yourself. Because what you're going to do, and we all know this in the military, is you're going to go to the doctor, you're going to go to the ER, and you're going to say, my stomach hurts, or I'm having, problems breathing, or whatever it is. And they're going to look at you and look at your age, and they're going to immediately write you off. And they're going to give you, I don't know, Motrin. It's the whole Motrin change of socks thing, right? Go home.
Yeah.
You're not my problem anymore.
We gave you an x-ray. We didn't see anything. Get out of here,
Right. Yeah. And we see that in the military world. You also see that in the civilian sector. And one of the things that she and I had talked about early on is getting more of that awareness out to the civilian side of the house. So when you do have veterans that are coming to civilian hospitals after they get out, that maybe they're going to be more aware to what we've been exposed to, which is more unique than, your regular civilian population, and get your brain thinking a little bit more, whether it's the triage nurse all the way, through that whole spectrum of care. That one of the team members will say, hey, wait a second, this guy, yeah, he's young, but, these guys have been exposed to X, Y, and Z, burn pits, if that's going to turn the light on and maybe make you investigate, fine, whatever. But it's still, we're still such a long way from there. So it's really on the person to advocate for themselves and say, hey, I've been exposed to this. Maybe even know statistics. My big shocker with a lot of this has been the colon cancers. I am so shocked to see how many of these guys are getting colon cancer. Because if you know, the screening doesn't even start. What is it, 45 or 50? I don't remember which.
I'm 40, and they haven't even started talking to me about it. I'm 41. I'll be turning 42 this year, and it was literally brought up as a joke. They were just like, "Oh yeah, 45. You're gonna, get the poke, and we're gonna do a colonoscopy and whatever." Like, it's just not even a thing until. And by then, if you look, like, no kidding, if you look at Peaches got in when he was 17. Even if he retires at 25, 26 years in, he's still never gonna hit that threshold. He's gonna go through an entire 20 years of his adult life, 25 years, without getting a single check.
I'm 45. I'll be 40. So
no, you're not, girl. Stop playing right now. You did that for everybody in the comments. You are not. You are lying. You're 45. Get out of here. Nobody's believing you. Stolen valor. You caught her on video. We caught you on wax.
I'm lying and saying I'm older.
That's it. You're actually 37, but you're like, I want people to respect me, so I'm going to say I'm 45. So I get that distinguished look.
But yeah, if you think about it, I'm 45, so I'm just now eligible for a colonoscopy. This is 27 years from when I started the military. So I actually got a colonoscopy, I think my late 30s, and I had to lie, essentially. I had to tell them that I had a family member that has a direct family member that has colon cancer or polyps or something, and that was the only way they were going to take me. Admitting this on whatever, but yeah, it was the only way that they.
It's okay, nobody's listening. I say this all the time. You can say whatever you want. You can curse. You can say whatever you want. Nobody's listening. It's like a tree. If a tree falls in the forest and nobody's there, does it make a sound? Nikki, did you really just say that? We don't know. Both of our followers are going to be shocked that you put that information out there.
But yeah, I had it because I was having some stomach issues. I was feeling some changes, and I probably was a little bit. I knew like 3 different people at that time who had colon cancer that were in their early 30s, and so I was a little freaked out with it. And so I was like, I want a screening, and they wouldn't do it, and so I finally had to say, I have a family member that has it, so they finally did it. But what's really shocking, with them not wanting to do it, is colon cancer is one of the most curable cancers if you catch it in those polyp phases. All they do is they go in, they just remove those polyps, and then they keep an eye on you, right? So you go back, I think it's every year, every however many years, to make sure that there are no more polyps. Super simple. Your life goes on, nothing ever happened, inconvenience of a colonoscopy. Now, if you don't do that, and you don't want to screen people, so, we've got all these guys that were in their early 30s that are coming with colon cancer. It's probably been there for a couple of years, I would guess. And I'm guessing nobody would take them serious with their symptoms. I'm sure at some point they mentioned it to one of their battalion surgeons or somebody, and it was just like, oh, you're fine. Don't worry about it. You're young, blah, blah, blah. Sent them home. And when they finally come back and they discover it, now you're stage 4. Well, now it's the deadliest cancer, or one of the deadliest cancers, when it's in stage 4. So you've just gone from doing, in my mind, a simple colonoscopy to, which would have eliminated all these issues. If they did have a tumor or whatever, they could have gotten rid of it. Life goes on their way. They're good. To now stage 4 colon cancer. And most people, what's the mortality once they're diagnosed? I think it's like 6 months to a year or something once you're diagnosed with stage 4. So yeah, it's just crazy. So that blew me away that there were so many people, so many young service members that were coming down with colon cancer and finding it in the later stages, which to me is completely preventable. When we talk about preventable deaths, right? And we always talk about this in the medicine world and in the EMS world. This is a preventable death in my eyes. And it's such a disservice that anybody dies from that. Like, nobody should be dying from colon cancer.
So what do they need to be saying when they go into these appointments and these checks to get there? Because it has to be a thing. Again, you want to advocate for yourself, but let's give them the cheat code. When you go in, because I know what I would say now. I would go in and I would say, hey, I'm exposed to a lot of these chemicals, and I think that I might be in a risk category for this. I would like to push this up earlier. And if you don't agree, I would like a second opinion. And, we can go from there for, what it is that you're actually allowed to request. But what would you say to those young men? Because I'd say when you hit 30, this needs to be, on your checklist. You need to start thinking about these things because we are living much longer into life. So you need to start doing that. It used to be like, 40s and 50s guys would start worrying about this stuff. If we're going to live longer, that means you got to move that up. It needs to go left in your timeline and not right in order to get ahead of problems. So what would you've been on the receiving end. You're the one holding the clipboard, you know what I mean? And you're the one recommending these procedures. So what do you want to hear as that person that's like, hey, this is an informed patient and we should get them the scan they need?
Well, I mean, if it's in the ER, hopefully you do have somebody who will recognize that, hey, this is kind of odd symptoms. And unfortunately, like the colon cancer symptoms, a lot of the times, if it's not just, I'm shitting blood, it's, oh, my stomach hurts or whatever, then it's a generalized, it's hard to determine, right? I think ERs are doing a little bit better with getting like just doing a CAT scan and just kind of like, okay, let's just look and see what's going on in there. But if they do go to the ER, because, in the ER, yes, we're busy. We don't have time to diagnose everything that's
people
wrong
are literally dying right now, right? You don't have time to throw hours at each individual patient. Like there are people that are, no kidding, trying to stop living, and it's your job to make them quit doing that. Like you have to go stop the dying. So
so it's really, going to your primary care doctor and being a complete pain in their ass.
It's like when I explain to people, it's like the ER should be your last resort. It's not fucking primary care. Like, do not come here asking for a refill on your lisinopril. Like, this is not, if you don't have health insurance and you have a baby, then you can't speak English. Like, this all happens to me on a daily basis. And it's literally treat and street. And so Nikki knows, we spend them like Boston. I'll tell you what. So we spend the most as a nation on healthcare, but we receive the least return on investment. So we are the most unhealthy population, but we spend the most in healthcare. Where the fuck's the health? All we see is care. And so like, it's so tedious because like we are always bombarded with patients. And I mean like a trauma 1, tier 1 hospital in the city. And I mean, like when I say these are all issues that like, you could have went to primary care, you could have went to urgent care, or you could have just taken your meds as they were prescribed. Like these are all things that you can do, like, and so for us, it's very, very frustrating. So, and here's the thing, it's crazy statistics. I love statistics. I hate to do the math part, but I like the epidemiology behind it. So 44% of providers at the VA are competent to provide veteran-centric care based on toxic exposures, which isn't a great number, 44%, but they're working at it, they're trying. However, a study shows that of the nursing population across the country, nurses, we are the most trusted profession, and I take a lot of pride in that. We have been, I think we're better than doctors, hands down. Our nursing from DNP, NP, you name it, I think we're great. And I speak for all of us. And so, we care about
when the council met this week, they were like, you, Chelsey, you're going to be the one on the One's Ready podcast. You're speaking for all nurses.
I'm speaking for all nurses. What, did Nikki leave?
She might have, but we're going to keep going.
So
she might come back in. Sometimes it happens.
So I speak for all nurses when I say that. It's like we care greatly about our patients. So when I read that, of the most trusted profession in the world, only 4% are competent to provide veteran-centric care, my heart broke. And I mean, like, I stepped back and I looked at it from my perspective, as an ER nurse. And I'm like, wow, yeah, I've had a lot of younger people come in, and, with only 25% of post 9/11 veterans utilizing the VA, the majority of them go to outpatient providers. And so, we don't even ask that question. I wouldn't assume that you're a veteran, it's so we're very biased based on our approach because we're time constrained, our resources are fucking terrible. We're understaffed, underpaid, didn't get my break, COVID, everything's just against us. So, if you come in and you say, hey, I'm suffering from IBS-like symptoms, nausea, vomiting, blah, blah, I'm be like, well, listen, stop using creamer in your coffee extra with the sugar melted. Right. That's what I tell Kyle, and so like, that's on us.
The first time. Well, and the first time you described this problem, like the thing that popped into my head is like, you need people to think in opposition to Occam's razor. You need people to actually look for the zebras when they see horses. You need people to be like, hey, this person was a veteran. They were exposed to any number of unknown and unstudied things that could possibly be causing them problems. They fit this profile. It's not going to be every single one. Like, people think every single ER shift is like an episode of House, where there's some complex medical thing that you study on and you read an obscure passage and you figure it out. No, I'll tell you what it's a lot of. It's a lot of people that don't actually need you, that are using a system that they shouldn't. I distinctly remember when I was doing, and this was when I was a PJ, right? Like, we always go back and we do 2 or 3 week rotations. I was in Birmingham, Alabama, and I called my dad. My dad was a 30-year fireman and paramedic in a small town in Northeast Ohio. I grew up in the firehouse. And I called my dad, and this is after I deployed, right? I don't call my parents when I'm proud for many things. I called my dad and I told him, Dad, I had 11 calls tonight on a 24-hour shift. Every single person that called that ambulance needed the ambulance. And it had never happened to me before. I called him and I was like, Dad, every single one of those people that called 911, we had like 2 or 3 car accidents. We had somebody whose baby was having a no kidding grand mal seizure, and it was like they needed intervention to help. Every single person that called 911 needed 911. It is never like that. I called to tell him that because I was like, I can't believe we didn't get one BS call. I can't believe that our system didn't allow for these things that should not be there. So it's really hard when you get jaded, and you see jaded paramedics, and I know you've seen burnt out nurses and burnt out doctors and burnt out EMTs that they're just over it. And right, yeah, and you get so frustrated with it that that kind of thing is pervasive. But what we need here is we need somebody that doesn't want to just process another patient through. They want to look and say, hey, wait a second, this could be a serious thing, and this is what. It's very rare that you get to actually make an impact on a situation that you can point to and you can go, this is when I turned the tide for this patient's treatment. And it sounds like we just need to get awareness out there so that people are even aware that, hey, there's a whole category of people. You need to look at these different things.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like when, unfortunately, that what goes against these guys is they're young. And it's that bias with medical. It's like, oh, there's no way you're having a heart attack, or there's no way you have cancer, because statistically over the last, whatever, and we maybe need new research or whatever to change those statistics and see really how much these cancers are affecting people at a younger age. But there is that bias where they automatically just start writing you off. So it's really being, how do we get that awareness of, if, you get a 60-year-old come in and say, I have chest pain. We usually take that pretty serious because they're in that age group, right? The group that we know or statistically know. So now we need that sort of thought process when a veteran comes in and says, I haven't been crapping right the last 4 months.
Constant migraines or, problems that I never had before, like especially new onset weird things like skin conditions or stuff. You're just like, why do I have this patchy part? Why am I waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning for no good reason? It can manifest itself in a whole lot of different ways,
Right.
So it's crazy. You mentioned, so how we got started on this conversation was a friend of yours, who we won't mention by name, passed away from skin cancer, and his story was one of the stories that was submitted to us. And so as a nurse with a master's degree, as a published researcher internationally, I had no idea that melanoma could be metastatic. I read that and I was horrified because your girl is from Boston and is 100% Irish. So I am whiter than the walls behind me.
Your girl's out here fair skin. Yeah. You're glowing. You look like white bread that got topped off with some baby powder.
I really do. Right now. Like the paper, like I'm as white as a paper. So I took the story to heart, and a lot of other people did when we briefly shared it. And so the next day I called the VA and I was like, I need to be checked out at derm. And they're like, why? And I was like, you see my skin? And so I went in. This is a true story. I swear to God. I went in and I went for my appointment. I want to say it was this past Wednesday. And they checked out a few and they said, this one is either stage 0 or stage 1 melanoma. And I was like, what? And I was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, yeah, we did the scrape test. It came back positive. So I have to go, when I get back from here, I have to have like 3 of them removed because they're cancerous. And I was like,
wow.
I was like, what the fuck? And so they said to me a lot of, you mentioned the skin conditions, and it's like one of them's on my wrist right here. And so what happened was JP8 literally burned my skin getting soaked with JP8. Because, in aviation, we act cool and we wear like our sleeves rolled up and we think we're high speed and we can wear aviators in the flight line. And so I doused my arms. Sure. And so now my skin is like degrading. And like, they're like, we need to get rid of this because this is cancerous. And I was like, holy shit. And so to think about how fast and progressing a skin cancer can be, like my heart sank when they said to me, and I was like, I'm 31 years old. And they're like, yeah.
Well, melanoma is, again, it's another cancer that if you catch it early, you're 9 times out of 10, you're fine. But it's one of those when it progresses, to a metastatic state, then and my first, dealing with that is when I was on the cancer floor and I had this aviator, a pilot, who was I think he was 35. And he came to us, we started the chemotherapy regimen, the whole bit. Within we watched him deteriorate over about not even 6 months. I want to say like 3 or 4 months.
Heartbreaking, isn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean, he was done within 4 months of his diagnosis. And I remember distinctly there was this right towards the end of his life, his command had come over. They wanted to give him an award. And so they all came over to the hospital, and we had a solarium room in the back of the ward that, was a nice room that they could do the presentation. And his wife goes to get him out of his room, and he's just, because it had metastasized to his brain, and he was just out of it. And like, he's just wandering around, has no idea who he is, what he's doing. His kids are there. And it was just, I was like, melanoma, really? Like, this is going to take this young 36-year-old out? Like, I feel like with the skin cancers, you can advocate for yourself a little bit better. And one of the things that you do need to do is, one, be aware, right? So that's where, like, it's great with HunterSeven and all the the stuff you're putting out there is just, I'm sure, things people had never even thought about or, didn't know about. I mean, when we're surprised by it and we're in the industry, I was like, people who are not medical are like, what? So education. And then 2 is, with skin cancer, especially, you can go, and if you are at higher risk, like, you're Irish or, you've been in the sun all your life, whatever, you can go to your dermatologist and they will do a yearly skin, like a mapping of your skin, and they'll have all of your moles and locations and describe everything out. So then when you go back again, if anything's changed, and then you can also be looking at yourself too, right? So yourself the best. You can, where the moles are. The back's a little bit harder, but if you have somebody that lives with you, you can have them look at your back. So you can do a little bit more advocating for yourself with the skin cancer. But yes, but the thing with like melanoma, a lot of people, where they get burned is that you can get moles like between like the webbing of your fingers, your toes, and people don't ever look in those spots, right? Behind their knees. When's the last time you looked behind your knees?
Never. I am not flexible. If I try to look behind my knees, I'm going to break my spine in half, Nikki. Like, not everybody has your mobility.
First of all, Nikki, when's the last time you saw the back of your knees? I can't. We'll wait.
Why did that sound so aggressive?
Yeah, because I'm trying to look at the back of my Nikki. That's inappropriate. X-rated.
What do you mean? Right there.
I can't wait to tell the guys about the podcast that I got us fired on.
You can't put your leg behind your head?
Yeah. No? Oh, okay. Yeah, go on. I do want to say.
Listen, you two, focus. This is a family show. Focus.
So Chelsey, there are specific risk factors. So I mean, like, and this is where like Nikki was in a nice warm desert type area in Afghanistan, but like us army folk, we were up in the mountains in Afghanistan, and and think about it like this, right? Kabul is the most disgusting place in the fucking world, literally. Like, they burn trash and shit just to stay warm, and so the ozone layer is totally depleted. And so when you think about the elevation in Kabul versus like Sangin, you're looking at 2 different elevations. And so you are actually more likely to be exposed to cancerous predispositions, or you're more likely to be diagnosed with melanoma if you served in Kabul, where the ozone layer is depleted. It's a lot colder and there's snow.
The ionized radiation,
because you're that much closer.
Aviators too, right? Because we're always flying high elevation. So
I met this guy named Joel Neeb. He didn't deploy overseas. He was a F-22, one of those not Tom Clancy. What's that guy's name? Tom Cruise, when he did the plane thing, the Tomcat,
Top Gun.
Top Cat.
Are you reaching for
Top
Top
Gun.
Gun? Is the name of the movie the best
Top
movie on
Gun,
the face of the
whatever.
planet?
Listen. I was in the Army. Okay.
I was inverted.
I was inverted.
Yeah. Well,
Chelsey.
so this guy was one of those guys, right? So he was one of those high speed, like #1 pilots, went to the Air Force Academy, like beautiful man, literally Joel Neeb, very good looking man.
Shout out to Joel. Wherever you are, J-Dad, you got a couple of stands here on the One's Ready podcast.
So
shout out for having a square
actually,
jaw and some steely eyes.
So it's literally, you have to look him up on Facebook. So he actually wrote a book, but he's competing in American Ninja Warrior this week. So great guy. And so, anyways, he started flying, and when he would pull over like 3 G's in his suit, he'd get this pain, and it was where his appendix was. So obviously, if you have pain in your side, it's usually appendicitis. You know, you push on it. If the pain goes away when you push on it, and then you release, it comes back. Usually indicative of appendicitis. They did
From
that.
McBurney's point, you're looking for rebound tenderness. No big deal. That's no big deal. That's what it is. Shout out.
No big deal. Well, so check this out.
So listen, we're all professionals here. Yeah.
The Air Force doc was like, no, they didn't think it was appendicitis because nothing really matched that. He was fine. It just only hurt when pressure was on it, like when he was pulling G's. A year later, they finally determined that he had appendix cancer. And so his book's amazing. Talking to him is amazing. They gave him like a month or like a few months to live at 31 years old, and he like ended up beating it. But I mean, like, this is somebody who spent his entire career. And so I said to him, I was like, well, what the hell? Like, how did you get all these exposures? And he's like, my wingman behind me would point the laser on me to track me on like like to keep eyes on, I don't know, fancy Air Force stuff. I don't know. I was in the Army. And so these lasers to like track on the sonar or the radar, and they're cancer causing rays, like literally. And so we use them in the Army too, in the helicopters. You know, when you have IR beacons and you shine down those lasers, those are actually cancerous. Yeah. You didn't know that, did you? We'll talk about that off comms too.
Until just now. I was today. Yeah. Let's
flag them
that one further.
And
I was today years old.
Yeah. So like my guys that are like the TAC Ps, that they're calling in, danger close airstrikes, and, we're shining down and we're like, oh yeah, there you are. But so he said there's a lot of radiation, a lot of different systems in these airplanes, and then like the carc paint and all this stuff. So like so many exposures happen in the most crazy places. And like Nikki was saying, these special operators, I mean, like when you think about like the team guys from the SEAL teams, they do those workup things, right? And they train and they shoot and they do the same drill over and over and over and over again. I posted a video on Instagram of what it looked like to shoot various calibers in like slow motion, and to watch the actual propulsion of like gas and lead and just particulate matter. And I mean, like, I shoot a lot, my Noveski shirt, shout out to Noveski. I love Lorena.
Shout out Noveski. I know they're listening. What's up, guys? I know you're a big fan.
What's up, Lorena? What's up, Elrad?
What's up, Elrad?
True story. So I'm going to convince her, actually. Here's the thing. So I'm going to convince her. FN right now is the only one who has piston-driven rifle systems in the DoD. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to convince Noveski.
Well, H&K. H&K runs a piston, the 416 and 417.
Oh, well, listen, not everybody's that high speed, okay?
Oh, okay. Way to turn that around and make that a dig on me. That's cool.
I mean, well, okay, so we have two manufacturers engineered overseas, but I'm saying like piston-driven versus gas-operated makes such a huge difference. And I mean, like for me, like, it does, I mean, well, for somebody like Nikki, I should say, but a lot of my shooting was done indoors. And like I was talking to Casey, Casey's amazing, one of Nikki's friends, and he was saying he's a RSO at an indoor gun range. And I mean, like on the day-to-day basis, he has people turn guns on him by accident, all that, all that good stuff. But more so the amount of lead exposure that he faces from being in an indoor range. And I mean, like when we talk about colon cancer, think about it. Everything we do, we can absorb through the mouth, we can inhale through the mouth, we can ingest through the mouth, and everything goes to one, more often than not, it will go downwards through your GI tract, whereas some stuff can go into your trachea. But for the most part, you're predisposed to so many bad things that enter your system. And I mean, like, I'm going to share a story with you because this story kills me. It kills me to this day. And I mean, I am not an empathetic person. At least I try not to be, right? Because that's how you get burnt out. Listen, this kid brought me to tears. He was so thankful. And so 32 years old, he was diagnosed. He spent his career, he went to boot camp up the street in San Diego. He went to the 3rd Recon Marine, whatever you guys call it, and he went to Okinawa. He responded to the Fukushima nuclear reactor incident when he was on a ship, and he had no idea. Nobody had any idea. And so then he goes to Afghanistan. He was, with a unit, and the commander ended up dropping a JDAM, danger close, 38 meters away from him. His friend got the Silver Star. He got a Bronze Star. He gets out, swear to God, he gets out. He ends up joining the Ohio National Guard, and he signs up to be a 18 X-ray. So he goes to the schoolhouse. Talk about a badass guy. Very, very nice guy too. And so he goes and he becomes the 18 Bravo, goes back to Ohio, and then redeploys with 219. So he goes over to Afghanistan, deploys again, comes home, and everything's good to go. 10 years in the military, and then he becomes a cop in Wisconsin. With he has a wife, 2 kids. 31 years old this past summer. He's fucking my age. 31 years old, right? He goes to the doctor because he's having issues, stomach issues, GI, diarrhea, nausea, very unspecific, right? Especially for somebody like him, we could chalk that off to psychosomatic, PTSD, IBS, lactose. Like there's a list that I could chalk this off to. So they do a scan of his abdomen, and they think they see a cancerous mass. And so they end up taking a biopsy. They did a ECRP or whatever it is. And they identify that, this is most likely adenocarcinoma, but it's in the early stage. It's in the pancreas. So it was stage 1B adenocarcinoma of the pancreas. And they said, they assumed it was hereditary because he's 31 years old. How in the world would this young, healthy specimen of a man be diagnosed with this severe cancer that's seen in somebody who's 68? And so they treated him with a medication that was immunotherapy based on a hereditary predisposition. And within 7 months, his cancer transformed to stage 4, and it spread to his liver.
Wow.
7 months. And so I've been working with him. He calls me and he says to me, he said, I understand that I'm going to die. It is what it is, but please do not let my wife go unhelped and my kids. Please help my wife and kids. And my heart broke. And so, of course, Wisconsin, I don't even know where Wisconsin is on a fucking map. So I can't imagine their healthcare system is that good. Yeah, I know. I'm sure it's cold.
Yeah, so there's like a mitten.
It's where
and
Vortex
it's like,
was headquartered.
Really?
It's that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's way north.
So regardless, I'm like, well, I can't imagine their healthcare is as good as in Boston because, we're very confident in Boston that we're the best at everything we do. So I sent him the Dana-Farber. Everything. Best football team, best baseball team. So best medical schools. So so we sent him, I got him to Dana-Farber the next day. I was like, please, Dr. Abrams, you're one of the best in the East Coast. Please help this guy. And he made the same mistake. He said there's no way that, he thought that it was Lynch syndrome, a genetic predisposition. And I said, no, because if it was Lynch syndrome, the metastatic biopsy in the liver would show that, and it doesn't. And so his cancer, we actually made, using machine learning, a risk factor list based on his exposures, on his OMAR reports, the most in-depth classification of exposures you can imagine. And it ranges from 2,4 DNT from the danger close JDAMs, cesium, from the radiation from Fukushima. And so, of course, this fucking guy has pancreatic cancer. For fuck's sake, he drank the water in Afghanistan. He would how many people who served in Afghanistan probably have H. pylori? And that's an easy correlating factor for cancers, throat cancers, lymphoma. Like Nikki, how do you think she lost so much weight? H. pylori. No, just kidding. No, she works out. That's why she needed
the disrespect. I see her on the gram just pumping. Here's my question though. Is we have all seen these things, and in my head, of course, there's this voice that's like, oh, tell your own story about your own quick diagnosis to cancer death. But the fact that I know Nikki has a ton of those stories. That's not your only story. That's not even my only story. The fact that we can sit here, the three of us, and we have all of these things that we want to tell, it's indicative of how much this actually is an epidemic. And it is something that we need to address. Like, let's get aggressive with it and let's really get the help out there. So it seems like a good time to transition. Like, how do we help HunterSeven? We'll talk about Mill Meme Madness. And I mean, everybody knows you as the mastermind behind that. It's like the land of misfit toys. Everybody puts their spears down for like 2 times a year.
I have no
it's
idea.
Mill Meme Madness and Hallameme.
I have no idea who that cat is. I don't even know his real name. We call him the cat.
Another SF meme page.
I adore him. I was like, hey,
yeah,
like, who are you? Like, I want to send you like a fucking thank you. And he's like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
that's how that.
It's the cutest cat too. Cutest cat in the world. But that cat has raised more money than you can. Love him.
You're right. How do we keep this going for you though? So outside of Mill Meme Madness, how can the average dude or dudeette, like, how do we actually support it? Do we just retweet everything that you put out and repost everything, or can we actually make donations? Do you guys have any any sort of other events during the year or what?
So I'm actually in San Diego for an event.
The biggest thing, and I think how you guys blew up is really that finding certain communities that have been advocates and have been very proactive in, just the awareness that you exist and getting it out there. Obviously, like donations help all these people who can't afford second opinions and, certain testing, or, in the military is like, not paying attention to them, and Chelsey's networking with her other people to get them help. So, donations are always, or helping families be near their loved ones when they have to go to the hospital or whatever. I mean, I know you spend tons of money on all that. So, that's always great. I think the biggest thing is always going to be education. And it all comes down again to, we're not going to fix the healthcare system to say, oh, you're a veteran, you could have been exposed to X, Y, and Z. Let's go and run these tests. Like, that's never going to happen probably anytime soon. Right. So, but the more we can get the awareness out, and if we can slowly change the mindset to like, oh, hey, I see a 60-year-old with chest pain, automatically think that's serious, to, change the mindset to the veterans that come in and have these kind of vaguer symptoms with, whether it's stomach or lungs, whatever, to say, hey, maybe, we're missing something here. Let's look into it. But when you spread the awareness and education, it also puts it on the individual as well. So now they're aware of all of these different things. They're aware of colon cancer. They know statistics. They know, if I catch it early, so that might put a fire under their ass. Like, hey, no, my symptoms are, and Chelsey does really good posts on that, right? So when she talks about colon cancer, she's always putting, these are symptoms that can happen, or you can have, more specific than the general, I'm having stomach pain or gassiness or whatever else. Like she goes in the depth of, hey, if you actually see this, or, you have blood in your feces, or if you have stringy, mucusy type of thing coming out of your butt, whatever, like these are very, right. They're very specific things that could be colon cancer. So it's hitting on those key words when you do talk to doctors that, hey, it's not just abdominal pain, or it's not just gassiness. I'm having these symptoms, and being able to track it too. Like, I started noticing this. So, you turn around and look in the toilet after you take a crap and like, oh, this is what I'm seeing or whatever. If you come in with more information to the doctor, they're going to be more apt to listen to you and to start paying attention to what you're saying. So it's, I'm not saying go and be, the internet doctor, but just being more aware of your body, because one, we know our body is better than anybody else. We do tend to ignore a lot of symptoms, and nurses are probably the worst at doing that. But it's, being more aware, like, hey, something's kind of changed, and knowing that, hey, I served overseas, I was exposed to this, maybe I shouldn't ignore this, or, oh, hey, this mole looks kind of weird, or, let me do a body check or whatever. Yeah, I'm getting headaches every single day. This is probably not normal. Let me go in, because there's a lot of brain cancer too, right?
In the Navy community, there is.
Yeah,
a lot of brain cancer. Actually, Nikki sent over a young guy, a 31-year-old, who her friend told us about, and within that week we got him up to Duke Oncology, and he's doing much better considering. but I mean, it's that enacting the community, using the resources. And I mean, like I don't care what time of the day it is. I mean, maybe I'll always make sure that you get the care you need, and our team will too. Like, and if I don't have the answer, I'll reach out to Nikki, or I'll reach out to whoever, or she'll reach out to somebody, you know. And so it's like, we're all in this together. And so, I mean, 90% of what comes into this foundation goes back out. And so, you know, the other 10% is like admin costs. But when people say to me, like, this is a volunteer gig for me, I get paid $77 a year, $77.77 a year.
Nice.
That's my
That'll
salary.
almost get your tank filled up right now.
Yeah.
I drive a Dodge Ram Rebel, so
No, it won't then. Never mind. Yeah, sorry, that's not even filling your tank up. That's like a half tank.
I do need to shout out Chelsey, because you're speaking of that individual that you're talking about. This is how fast and this is like, I know if I say something to her, she jumps on things so quickly. So this guy put out a post on Facebook. He was so hopeless, didn't know where to go, didn't know where to turn to anymore. The healthcare system was like basically like shooing him off at this point. So one of my friends who knew, he was a corpsman, put out, I saw her post on Facebook saying, like, if anybody knows someone who can maybe help, or a foundation, like, I mean, he was like, he was pretty down when I think you got a hold of him, and just kind of hopeless. And I saw it and I was like, I'm going to show Chelsey this. And just thinking like, you kind of read over it and like, you know, maybe reach out to him at some point. She literally, you emailed him or something within like probably 10 or 15 minutes of me giving her the information. She had him on the phone, was talking to him. I mean, things were moving within like a couple of days with him getting, you know, you had him over at, was it Duke, you said?
Duke, yeah.
I mean, literally paying for all of this for him to get this second amendment. She's, you know, on the phone with these doctors, and he's rolling. And I remember I see his post, I think it was the next day or 2 days after, like, oh my God, there's this angel that is like, come out, and like, I'm on my way over to Duke. And like, I mean, just craziness, the speed that she works in and the network that she has. And that's why, like, yes, number one is raising the awareness that they exist. And you know, they've gone from when I, you know, kind of signed on with you guys, I think you had like 800 followers. So you're like pushing 40,000 now. So, and that's in just a couple of years. So, you know, the community has really stepped up and helped. And I think they also see the genuine of you. Like, she literally does not, I don't think you sleep, you know, and it's all about these people. And for you to say you're not empathetic is such bullshit, because
I try not to be. But like,
she jumps on things and you relate with people, and it's that East Coast thing you're talking about, right? Yes, you're very brash and you're very forward.
You might not be nice, but you care.
Yes,
I'm not nice, but I do care. She's
gonna go down singing with you, and to know that you have that, like that back behind you, like she will go down with you. Like, she'll figure out every possible thing.
It's not great.
Yeah. And I mean, I worry about you a lot, but you know, you take it all in, and you know, that person becomes your family, and you're not going to let them die without, you know, going down every single avenue. So,
you know, what's funny? I didn't realize how desperate some people are to have bone marrow donations. And so we actually registered with Be the Match. And if, for me personally, it's like, if I ask anybody else to do something, I will be the first one in line to do it. Right. And so shortly after I signed up to be a donor for this bone marrow drive for veterans, Nikki was the next one. And it's like, that just tells you like the level of commitment we have towards this, you know, like if there's anything I can do. I told this kid in Wisconsin, I said, listen, man, you can live without a pancreas. If you need a liver, if I'm not your blood type, then I will find somebody who is your blood type, because like, you're not in this alone, man. Like, if I need to find 5 livers and take a piece from each one, like, you know, like, I've asked for worse things. So, you know,
it regrows itself. Why would you need 5 pieces? Do you need 5 individual liver? I don't
know. But here's the thing. Like, I'll do it. I'll make a tree.
Crime podcast. I'll make a tree.
We'll go kill somebody with the liver you need so you can have that.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like this is our community. These are people that I served with, that you served with, that she served with. You know, it's like as a nurse, and this is a downfall about nursing. As a nurse, it sucks, because this is stuff that we do take home. And when I say that I get a new cancer diagnosis to me about weekly, and probably a death about bi-weekly, it's tough. And I mean, like I said, that list has grown. I mean, Nikki and I just lost a guy to colon cancer that had easily 2 years left, and he died suddenly. And so, I mean, like, you know, aviation guy. And so, I mean, like this is just, it's tough, and it hits home. Like, it hurts. It hits home, and it hits hard, especially when you learn about their families and about their loved ones, and, you know, all the things that were missed. And it's like, this is our profession. Like, we are healthcare providers. If I'm not competent to do my job, then I don't belong in this position. You know, it's not a DOD problem. It's not a VA problem. It's a healthcare provider problem. You know, if you can't look at your patient individually, if you can't look at them for their risk factors, you know, and literally listen to their story and stop being jaded based on that everybody goes, you know, and just is a tertiary cycle of process, like, take a step back. Like, when's the last time, you know, I'll be the first one to tell you the VA has given me a fucking pound of pills. And when I say, well, okay, if I have severe acid reflux, which 70% of the military does, what's the root cause? I don't drink that much. But, like, what's the root cause? Like, why are you just going to give me pantoprazole or omeprazole instead of actually looking at the root cause? Is it H. pylori? Is it a gastric ulcer? What is it? You know, and so when you ask people, what's that root cause, and they don't have an answer, that's even more concerning. Because, I mean, it's like putting a bandage on a fucking bullet hole. Like,
but that's the problem with our healthcare, is we're very reactive, right? We're supposed to be the best in the world, but we're very reactive. We don't do anything, I know we try to push the preventative measures, and I think it's gaining some steam with people wanting to be more healthy. And I think you have kind of a division. I think you have half of the population who are all about being healthy, not having to go to the doctor, being very proactive, getting ahead of all the things. Like for me, for instance, right? I'm in my 40s. I know, okay, like, things are starting to deteriorate. I got my hormones checked. I'm doing hormone replacement therapy because my testosterone wasn't even registering. I'm doing things proactively that is going to keep me healthy in the long run. And then you have the other class that are still, like, they're going down that road of, like, it's that give me class, right? Well, I don't want to have to work for anything, but I want my health to be well. And they're the ones who are showing up and, thinking every pill is going to magically cure them or whatever. And that's a dangerous road to go down. So I think the second part of it too is, you got to take your health under control. And I know, like, as veterans, especially once we get out, we go through these funky little periods, right? Where it's this transitioning period. I don't know my identity really well. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So what do most of them do? They go down this path of being really unhealthy, which is drinking and,
destructive behaviors,
medication, drugs, whatever.
Various self-destructive behaviors.
Yes. And they start gaining weight, right? Because nobody's holding them accountable for being in shape or PRT fitness, whatever. So then they're going down this road, and that's what you do know about cancer and certain cancers is that we're exposed all the time. But once your immune system starts to break down and it can't fight those cells, then that's when it becomes a problem. So, not to say that everybody who's unhealthy gets cancer, but I'm just saying that the more healthier you are, you're going to eliminate 90% of your problems. And whether that's cancer, whether that's diabetes, whether that's heart issues and problems, whatever, there is a big push. I don't know if you guys seen it, I'm sure, but on this, like, social media with a lot of, like, pretty, respected veterans where they've all quit drinking. Like, I'm seeing that more and more, that's a thing. They're not smoking anymore. They're not drinking anymore. Being sober is kind of the cool thing these days. Like, it's actually quite, I wouldn't say shocking, but it's, from where I come from and the time that I come from, where it was just normal to be smoking and drinking all the time, to now having these
70s. Sorry, go ahead.
Hurtful. You know what? It wasn't what you said. It was how you said it. It was your tone is what really hurt.
Right. Well, go ahead, continue.
But, I mean, it's, you have these, and, and the thing with, like, special operations, people do look towards that, right? As much as we, like, clown on him, like, everyone loves to hate on him. You do, like, the community does look up to them. And so you have a lot of these top tier guys who are like, I'm sober, I'm not taking these pills. And they're talking about it too, which is really cool. But talking about being sober, and they're talking about, trying to get rid of all the drugs that maybe the VAs put them on or whatever else. And just starting to live that healthier lifestyle and going and working out. A lot of them are doing jujitsu, which is not only you're now taking care of your health, both physically and mentally too, right? So all of those things play into your mental health as well. So that's a big thing. And I think, that's another, you have to advocate for yourself health wise if you do feel something's wrong, but you also need to advocate in getting your health in check and living that healthy life. I mean, you have to take accountability as well, but getting the word out there, the awareness out there, and the education, that's the biggest thing. And the donations, I think, come with that, right? So people see your mission, they see how genuine you are, and they want to help and give. So
yeah, we spend a lot of money towards second opinions and medications and you name it. At our event on Tuesday, we'll be presenting 3 checks to 3 other foundations, one for medical aviation cancer support, one for cancer caregiver support, and then one for helping clean out the mold in enlisted barracks. So,
jeez.
Everything goes back into the community. This is our way of continuing service without serving, right? So.
Well, Chelsey, tell everybody where you can be found for any single project that you want. It's on the IG, and we'll blast it out from now until we get the podcast out. Like, you have friends in us for whatever we can do to help you out. Again, from our first conversation, I was absolutely shocked to find out that our specific, Air Force and Air Force Special Operations had such a rate that it did. And you were like, oh my God, yeah, you have to be talking about this. So where can we find you? Where can we support you? And most importantly, how do we donate to make sure you guys can keep going on and doing your righteous mission?
Yeah, I mean, check out the website, HunterSeven, HunterSeven.org. On social media, we're always posting tidbits of information. Keith is doing our blog now, so that's great because he's great at stuff like that. So I like to write books on social media posts, and everybody's like, that doesn't work. But I was like, there's so much information. So check out the new blog. Any specific questions, reach out to @FlyGirlRN, @FlyGirl right now. Spell it out. She'll answer all the questions for you. Somebody asked me the other day. Well, somebody asked me the other day, like, what's FlyGirl RN mean? FlyGirl right now? And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? It was the funniest thing.
FlyGirl right now, my dude.
Yeah.
Look at her page for a half a second and tell me what RN stands for, you idiot.
It's
She's
funny,
on there all the time.
Now he says he's FlyGirl right now coming. I'm like, you're fucking idiot. So, but no,
Chelsey,
in all seriousness,
I can't say thanks enough.
All seriousness though, anything anybody needs, shoot me an email, Chelsey, CHELSEY @HunterSeven.org, or Keith, or just drop an immediate needs request. If you have some serious concerns about your health, we'll get on it. In all seriousness, health is priority. So we like to joke, but we also like to take care of people. So.
Yeah. Well, from us to you, thanks very much. We'll do everything we can to help. For everybody else out there, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Go follow HunterSeven and Nikki over at FlyGirl right now. I love it. FlyGirl _right now. Nikki Selby. I want to say thanks for you guys coming into the team room. I appreciate your time, and keep going. Anything we can do to support, we will. Everybody else, train hard. Have a good one.